Okay, so at this point, if you watched the first video, just the Automation 101 Basics, um, pretty much covers just simply, how do you create a simple test using WebDriver. Um, I'm assuming at this point that you're new to automation, you're new to programming in general, and so I'm kind of going to introduce some programming concepts here, which you'll need to understand if you're going to understand the advanced programming logic that you'll need to use later on in order to get a really good test framework going. And so the first part that I'm going to go through is just splitting things up into into being more readable. Here, I have some comments which tells you what each line does, but as a person who's trying to read what this code is doing, it's not very readable. So for readability purposes, we oftentimes should split things out into different methods. Now, just on a programming side, there's public methods and there's private methods. A method is a thing that's called, and you have a lot of functions within a method that operates and does things. But this thing here that's highlighted is called a method. A public method is something that can be accessed by any class and any object, even outside of the program itself. A private method is something that can only be accessed within the class itself. And so in this example, I'll be using private methods to split out some of these functions. So first off, if I split this out, you can see this one's just a generic system setting. This function here is just going to the browser. These are very basic settings. This one is interacting with the menu. This one is setting the search and clicking on search. And then this last function here to click on a profile, this one is basically interacting with the profile search results page. And then this one, last one, is actually doing some searching with it. It's having to do with the checking of the profile. So if I split my test up into those different sections, it should look a lot like this. So first I'm going to start out with the private void set timeout, or I'll just use setup, because there's those two things at the top I'm going to do on every test regardless of and so I'm just going to do a setup here, and then I need to call it, so I'm going to use setup here. So what this will do is when this runs, it's going to call setup, and then setup's going to get called, and then it's going to run these two methods here. So there's my setup. So I set it up. In fact, to make it a little bit more readable, I'll do setup test. And then my next one, I'm going to do go to people page. Yeah, there we go. Go to the people page. And this one, I'm just going to drag this guy up and paste him in there, and then I just need to reference him on top. The other thing to note is there are tools that help you to refactor. You could use ReSharper to refactor, and it does a really good job. It makes it really easy. I'm doing this manually, again, because so you can get the concept of programming, as you'll need that as you do automation. This next one is I'm going to interact with the search. Now this one's important. So I'm actually just going to do a search method here, and I'm going to say that this is going to take in a couple things. It's going to take in gender. It's going to take in age. It's going to take in keyword. And those are the three variables I need for that. These are called variables. A string is just basically any type of text. It could be numbers. It could be a long essay, A string is just a type of variable that just contains text. And very basic programming principle. If I copy this and paste it here, I then need to switch out my variables. So instead of having this f here, I'm going to replace it with gender. In fact, for readability purposes, because it's abbreviation, I'm just going to do ABBR for abbreviate. That way the person who's writing the test knows that that's requiring an abbreviation. To concatenate strings, it's just a quotation mark, in quotation mark plus, and then whatever string you want. And so in this one here, again, I'm going to do age. And this last one, I'm going to do my keyword. So what this will do is, before where I had those values, anything, well, I'll continue here. So if I, on the top here, I'm going to do search, and that's going to say, okay, well now I need a string for the gender, so I'm going to do F. And it's going to say, well now I need a string for the age, and so now I'm going to do 18 to 24, and then it's going to say I need my keyword, and I'm going to say Viper. And so now what's going to happen is when this method is called, it's going to pass in these variables into it. Those variables then get passed in to each of the different functions below and are used to really set my drop downs and to set my text box. The last thing I need is I also need to click the search button in this method. And so I'll copy and paste that down there. Last, I need to go to a profile. So I'll create another method called private void go to profile. This one's not going to take any parameters. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this line there. Go to profile. Okay, and then the last part to take out is check profile for text. And so I'm going to do private void check profile. In this one I'm going to provide a string text to check. So I'll call it for readability purposes. And then here I'm going to copy this. Now here I actually have two variables because I have biking I'm checking and I have bike. And so I'm actually going to introduce something, hopefully it doesn't scare you guys off. I'm going to introduce what's called an array. An array is something that contains multiple values. So I'm going to say I'm going to actually take in text to check. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to well, I'll just go ahead and add those two variables there. So I'll say that I'm checking for multiple values. So I'll say text. I don't want to scare anyone off at this point, so I'll just do, for simplicity, text to check 1 and text to check 2. This isn't good programming, but this is basic, and so hopefully you're on a basic level and this will make sense to you and you're not thinking I'm going to do that. And so up here, then we just need to call that. So check profile, and then my first string was bike, and my last one was biking. And there we go. So as you can see, I've refactored my test. And what this allows me to do now is, because I've refactored it this way, this makes it really easy to create another test. And this is part of the reason why we refactor. This is kind of an object-oriented programming principle. So like find male biker. Let's say that I wanted to run the same test up here. I can just copy and paste those methods. And I'm going to change that to an M. And now I'm doing the exact same test, only this time I'm looking for a male biker. And all that logic is contained here below. And so there you go. So now let's see if it runs. I'm going to go ahead and run my male biker. There it goes. It launches Firefox. Clicks onto my people page. It's putting in biker. Hey, there's Devin. Devin, is he a biker? He is. Test Explorer passed. He is a biker. The program worked. My test is finished. So there you go. Kind of, again, the next step in test automation is you've got to group things together and reuse pieces of code. So next we'll get into more how do we organize this better, and how do we really leverage the framework to be more easily readable for a new user to work with.